Oh man, that song. Who is that? Did you
That's
know?
me.
Oh, is that you?
That's
Dang,
me.
dog. Oh,
Yeah.
that's cool. Oh, that's really cool.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
totally forgot Jeff said he was gonna do that. That was
Oh,
dope.
that's cool. Awesome.
Like I
I
said, you
was
got to get on those drums, Sam.
Oh, dang. All right. I gotcha. I
You know what I'm
gotcha.
saying?
I was I saw that there were subtitles and then the subtitles stopped at some point and
Oh,
I
they did.
realized I was following them and then oh yeah, that's cool. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool.
That's funny. That's dope. Appreciate that, Jeff. Follow
Yeah,
me on
that's
You're welcome,
cool.
SoundCloud.
buddy.
Do you have other music we can use?
Oh yeah, I have a whole track list.
Oh, dang. All right. Do you have stuff that's not, copyright like up on YouTube yet that we can use?
Yeah, I have stuff that's not on YouTube, and it's all
All
like
right.
original beats from my producers, so it's all
All right.
original.
Okay, good. Yeah. All right, good. All right, we'll use more. Let's keep using it.
Let's
Uh,
go.
yeah.
That's sick.
Hey, all right, so listen,
Yeah,
we're back in the game. Uh,
back in
back
it.
in the game.
Yep.
Big day. It's really interesting yesterday. I don't know how we stumbled upon DE and I, but uh, yeah, I was going to do something really sort of outside the box. I was going to try to get students to argue different sides.
Mm-hmm.
But then I just didn't have enough time to really pull that together.
Right.
And I didn't know how well they'd be able to do it. And, as it turns out, I feel like I'm really catching the sense at which students they're cool talking, but there's certain topics that they feel like they're going to get canceled on, man. So
Yeah. Uh-huh.
it's a
That's
little
what.
bit reluctant to jump in
Is that what
with
you noticed
opinions.
yesterday?
I felt like it might have been happening a little bit once we got about halfway in, and then I saw, oh, okay, hang on. So, but that was good. It worked out well because I really enjoyed jumping in and kind of leading the conversation and in different directions all at the same time. So,
Yeah. I think you did a really good job of like holding both sides, you know? Like
mm-hmm.
because by the end of it, I thought it made me laugh because you were like, "Are you confused? Are you confused? Are you
Yeah, yeah,
confused?"
yeah, yeah,
Because
yeah,
like you're trying to illuminate all the complexities like or what makes it so complex because both sides have like uh valid points on both sides of the argument. That's like, oh man, it makes it so complex. And I think they felt that.
yeah,
You did a great job showing
yeah.
that.
Yeah, I felt like it. I hope the stream, people watching, really felt that, right?
Hmm.
I think by the time we got to the end, students in the classroom were pretty confused, and meaning that they just weren't really certain where I was going. I think it was pretty clear that my job was to confuse them, so I had to take a
Right.
lot of different sides, and then I felt like I succeeded in that, and I don't know if that really came through on the stream because on the stream people
Mm.
tend to have more experience and more thoughts that
Mm.
they've already thought through a lot of stuff.
You're
You
saying
know.
like because people in the stream aren't students in some way.
Yeah, yeah, they have more experience. Like someone
Right.
yesterday someone who watched the class and the comments on the video right now. Someone said, they wish I had non-traditional volunteers, and I assume what she means is returning adult students.
I saw
And
that too.
yeah, and I think that yeah, it would be really interesting because people just would think through things more,
Hmm.
um, which makes it in some ways more fun. And I've had many adult students, but many fewer in the past several years. It's rare. I got one guy in class who's a vet, so I think he was in the Marines for 5 years. I don't know what year he is at Penn State, so he's in
Right.
his mid-20s at least. But
Right.
uh,
So
yeah,
are we saying like a few years older, not just like 22, but like not like a senior, but someone to like
yeah, in their
27,
30s,
28?
40s, 50s.
Got
I've
it.
had we have Irvin's in class now. Irvin
Right.
is he would have a lot to say, but I'm not using him as a volunteer because he's going to do a class later when I'm in Korea. But
Ah, okay.
uh, yeah, so yeah, it's always really interesting, when
Yeah.
people have experiences, but like Ian Doherty said, he's glad that I steel manned the class. Wait, Jeff, put that back up. People in the stream of having students their whole lives. Yeah, 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 because they're interested. Right, exactly. The reason people watch this class is because they're they're still students of life,
Right.
and so you're going to have so much to say. Oh my God,
Mhm.
um,
Mhm.
that's that's what it bothers me sometimes, really, because I feel like, oh, I just wish I could reach out and just grab people on the stream and put them right there. You can put people on the screen, and we're going to do some of that for sure,
Mhm.
because it's really important that I just don't. We're not. Hmm.
Mm.
Like, if we just brought people in for like 5 minutes, say like, all right, what's your question? What are you thinking? Kind of thing. That I think it'd be really
Right.
good. But
That'd be
and so,
awesome.
yeah, those of you on the stream, keep that in mind. That I do really want to do that here and there. Just boom, turn your camera. Jeff sends you a link. You have your camera. Make sure. The problem is you have to for sure have good audio. You have to. Hey, you can't lag, these kinds of things. And then just do kind of a quick thing in class. And it's always best. And it's really good to demonstrate to students in the classroom that people are watching from around the United States and around the world. That's like
Right.
really
Right.
so. Anyway,
Mhm.
if watching the stream, if you when you have something like that you just absolutely want to contribute in some way, you gotta just really connect with Jeff in the moment, and then we can go from there. Because I
Mhm.
would like to do that more. In fact, yesterday in class, and you guys are going to put a bunch of questions up, but I told Jeff ahead of time, make sure that we take questions from the stream. Uh, and so he was all ready to go, but I couldn't. Once I got into that place of holding down the conversation and just going back and forth and back and forth, I couldn't let up. I couldn't even look over to Izzy. Like, I just completely
Right.
forgot about it. And so it was
Yeah.
really,
Yeah.
that was,
Were were you feeling like you'd had to take a lot of um like are you usually in that place where you're like I can't distract myself, I
no,
have to stay.
no, I'm not. But I knew that this was an issue that demanded that I take many different sides and just hold that really strongly. I'm very passionate about the different sides, right? I'm really
Right.
passionate about these historical legacies of discrimination, which I happen to know a lot about. I mean, I study this, right? Yeah,
Right.
we were talking to our one volunteer, Mitra, I think is her name. She mentioned her mother, right? And her mother saying, "Look, I'm the only person in this place. Like, why aren't there more? I'm the only woman. Why aren't there more women?" Right?
Right.
And so somebody in the chat or on the screen is like, "Well, it does it occur to her that maybe other women really don't really want that job?" And I'm like, well, yeah, of course, yes, for sure. But also, I study discrimination, and I know that how much discrimination happens against women at certain levels of the corporate hierarchy, and how carefully that's studied, with these audit studies and stuff, right?
Right.
We don't just say like, oh, there's not enough women here, so that's definitely discrimination, because that's not the case, and no researcher will stake their credibility on that. There's there's
Like because there's a lack of population, because there's a lack of a group,
exactly.
it doesn't
Yeah,
mean that there's it doesn't automatically correlate to discrimination. It
yeah,
could be
yeah.
other
We have
factors you're saying.
our company's in a community where 35% of the members of the community are Hispanic, right? And we don't have any Hispanics in any of the 20 supervisory roles in the company. That's discrimination. Like, no, it's not. That's not discrimination at all. Like, you don't know that. Like, but when you dig deep and you study it and you look and you see, wait, hang on a second, right? And when we do that, and we're very careful about it, controlling for all the other factors and forces, we see a lot of discrimination in the world. So,
Right.
that's part of what this DEI stuff, the equity part of it is about, like really looking at that. And so I'm passionate about that. And a lot of people they don't know that because they don't see the research on it, so
Mm.
it's
They
like,
don't
okay,
they don't know what part, or
they
like
don't
they.
know that we know that a certain amount of discrimination exists, right? And sometimes a lot of it, and sometimes just a small amount. It's like, oh, okay, well, we can't destroy the whole system. We can't create policies to turn the entire system on its head just because there's a little bit of discrimination. I mean, come on, man. We're going to make everybody in the whole organization, like here at Penn State, the entire university has to take a workshop on some issue because the issue pops up in two or three places. So we're all going to spend 2 hours of our time
Mm.
doing this workshop that has nothing to do with us, but someone decided, okay, here it is. It's like, that's really a terrible waste of time. And so,
Right.
you have to be really, you
Are
got to be
these are these
cautious.
workshops like preventative measures or
Mm.
just
Stuff like that. Yeah, stuff like that. Understand what this is because, it's like, come on. But listen, I'm just these are kind of extreme cases, so just be aware that this is once
what?
again me going back and forth and being kind of critical, right? So
Mm.
it's a lot of wasted time with some of this DE&I stuff and not
Mm.
really poorly executed things, you know? And so
Ah.
like I I get it.
Are
Listen,
th- are s- mhm.
I did a thing. I did do a survey. I fill it out, right?
Mhm.
Here at Penn State. I
Yep.
had to they asked my opinion about somebody at Penn State, like, so they were
Like
asking
an
me,
employee or an
yeah, yeah, yeah,
applicant.
one of the big dogs in the organization, right? So it goes out to
Got it.
various people. It's not just me, it goes out to a lot of people.
Right.
And we get to the end and they say like, okay, well, they don't want to know who I am, but they want a certain demographic, so do you teach? Are you, what's your ancestry?
Oh, so this is
This kind of
anonymous.
anonymous, right? How long you been at the university, like 1 to 10 years, 11 to 20 years, that kind of stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
Um, and then they had a question on gender and and then they And then they had a second question on gender. They wanted to know, am I a man or a woman, right? Or am I non-binary or whatever? And then they had a
Oh, okay.
second question on gender, right? It was like,
What was?
wait, hang on, you just asked me that. So now it's like, do you identify as trans or do you identify as this? And then the third question, and how were you born? And I'm like, how many gender questions can you have? Like, it's fine. It didn't. I had to read through it. It's not a problem for me. The survey itself took me 20 minutes. So to spend an extra, 30 seconds reading two additional questions, that I'm like, what are you getting from this? Really, what are you
Mm,
getting? There are so many other questions I would think you could ask me that might be valuable for this, but
right.
what is this, right? And it's
Do you
so,
have an
and what
answer for
happens,
that?
yeah, I have an answer for that.
Okay.
And the answer is that people who are making up the question, they want to make sure they get the exact information that they think that they need when they haven't asked themselves, wait, do we actually need all of this information? Is it going to help us in any possible way?
Mm.
Like you get lost in it. We get lost in these kinds of
Wh-
things. So
I don't want to stop your train of thought, but I
yeah.
guess I was. So what's the reason they think they need this specific demographic
I
information?
have no idea why they thought they needed that. It's just like, look, are you a man or woman or a non-binary or something? Like, give me, like, give us a few options, right?
Hmm.
At World in Conversation, the last time that we were in full force, we did about, I don't know, like 20,000 or something students went through the program. 25,000 went in 1 year. This is pre-COVID. We asked the question, you know, man, woman, non-binary,
Hmm.
uh, trans. We gave it. We laid it out: man, woman, non-binary, right?
Hmm.
Or-
Yep.
Not a single person. Everyone chose man or woman. And I'm like, okay, well, we asked that because we want to know, like, hey, it's interesting to know, right?
And you know that
And
there's
then,
groups and communities here on Penn State campus
yeah, no,
that.
there's many groups. No, mind you, the people have more come out. So if we were to do that today, I'll bet with 20,000 students, there'd probably be 5 or 10 or maybe 20 that would answer that. Okay.
Hmm.
Which is like maybe 25 or 30. I don't know. You know what I mean? Because people just they just weren't really identifying like that. Even though they did personally, they weren't identifying in a kind of a public space, even though this was
Hmm.
also this was not, what did you say? What's the word? This was not, they weren't self-identifying, so we didn't know who they were, right?
Oh, it was
Anonymous.
anonymous. Yeah,
Anonymous.
anonymous. Gotcha,
Right, the
gotcha,
word.
gotcha. Yeah. The
So
sickness.
it's fine. Like it's fine. It's not a problem. It's just that sometimes we just do stuff and we don't think about it. That's
Mhm.
all. And I think that's
Well,
kind of,
I'm wondering if the purpose is different, or because this is like we're a research center, so I feel like that makes sense, right?
yeah, yeah,
Or
yeah.
but like and then the diff but I guess I'm like leaning towards, oh, I see your confusion. If you're like, what's the information for, like, what's the purpose? Is it like for research, or like what's the reason
Or is to
you
make
need all
sure
this
that you covered all your political bases and no one's going to attack you for being non-inclusive or whatever, right?
so
Or
like
being,
liability.
yeah, whatever, even though there's no serious legal liability, but it's just kind of, you don't want to look that way. But the point being, what I said, they asked, do you have any final comments? And I say, yeah, those 3 questions you had on gender, that's exactly why Trump is in office, man. Because people just get tired of this stuff. They really just get tired. And so,
Wow.
whatever. I get it. I'm a sociologist. I think it's really interesting, but
Wow.
I don't, people get tired of it. It's why, you got why this attack on DE&I, you know.
Do you think?
So
I guess I was gonna ask. We can go different places. I was gonna ask maybe if you have any under insight into the reason why people are tired. Is it because like we don't? Is it because we don't need it, or like the framing around it is incorrect?
I think we think a lot of it is really unnecessary, and we don't frame how and why it's necessary. If you listen to class yesterday and you hear
Hmm.
me talking about Native Americans and
Hmm.
like equity and equality and stuff, it's like, well, never you're going to think about that there is discrimination. People know that. And here's another one. We actually can stop a fair amount of discrimination. It's not just people will always discriminate, and no, we actually can stop a fair amount and not spend a lot of money in doing so, and
Mm.
having a long laundry list of laws and rules and make people jump through hoops and follow stuff. Uh, we don't need that much bureaucracy to stop a fair amount of it, and including
Mm.
discrimination against women, discrimination against people who are disabled, discrimination against all sorts of folks, right? We can actually do a pretty good job. Well,
That is
any
different than like a
people,
DEI initiative, you're
yeah,
saying?
yeah. Well, no, let's say it would be a DEI initiative, and so if you are watching, if you're thinking like, yeah, I don't like this DEI stuff. Well, you don't, because you don't really understand what a lot of it is. But if you
Right.
understand, if I walk you through, like I just said right there, we can actually stop a fair amount. We can make life more equitable, more fair for everybody. For maybe not everybody, but for lots of folks, right?
Hmm.
People want that. Americans want that. They want fairness. Like that's the thing about Americans, man, in this country anyway. If you're not from the US, Liz, I'm going to say this. People want fairness, man. Yeah.
Mm.
So
And
like
so,
that's
what
the thing. Yeah.
so like you're seeing something different. Like, oh, there's a different pathway that we could go about that would still service like the needs um
Yeah.
of Americans in this particular area of like
Yeah.
DEI. And what are you seeing versus like what's being given, or like what's that
Well,
pathway you see versus what's being given that's unnecessary?
Well, what's
Or
being given, I think, is we just what people see are these really just absurd policy initiatives that just seem like, wait, what? What is that? And then
Mhm.
they get they get couched by commentators as being really absurd. But if you drill down, it's not very absurd at all, you know? And
Mhm.
and it's actually not a big initiative out there. It's not a big thing, and it doesn't encompass millions and millions of people, and it's not onerous for the vast majority of people. It's just a thing. Like, don't make a big deal out of it. But then somebody makes a big deal out of it, and then they talk about it. You know, these talking heads, both on the right and the left, pro DEI, anti DEI, whatever it is, right?
Mhm.
People they talk about it in these extreme ways, like when people attack me, and then it's like, oh, then it sounds so stupid, and then people get lose their minds, and they're like, oh, I hate all this stuff, and it's like, well, you really wouldn't hate it all if you. A lot is very, very thoughtful. If you had a disabled child, you really love DE and I. You know,
Mm,
like
right.
that's gonna come back, man. You know, the only reason we have all the services we have for kids who are disabled is because of DE&I stuff initiatives, man.
Right.
Otherwise, go take care of your own disabled child. Whatever. We don't owe you anything. You had a child that's disabled. Go take care of whatever. You're responsible now for that child. Don't look to the
Pa-
government for any help. You know?
So, like like I feel like part of what I'm hearing is that there's like this umbrella initiative that
Yeah.
is servicing those that don't really feel a part that need to be a part of this.
Yeah.
But like if you're a part of a certain need like demographic or like you're the parent of a disabled child, like this is great.
Yeah.
But so it's making me sound like it needs to be more um, funneled into, or not funneled, but it shouldn't be so umbrella, if that makes
Yeah.
sense.
Well, yes, that's right. But the problem is when you try to do that, when you try to talk about, when you try to enact policies for large groups of people, you're just
Hmm.
gonna you're gonna fall short. It's just not
Right.
gonna work. This
Because
is
some
why
people need it,
people
some
are
people don't.
yeah, exactly. And it's exactly this is why, you know, like at Penn State, like you really need to we have these scholarships. And like, okay, well, in order to be have to be able to receive the scholarship, you have to have this, and this qualification, right? It's like,
Hmm.
in order to be a TA in my class, right, you have to have
Hmm.
taken the class and you have to have at least a B or an A. You can't have a C. And I'm
Hmm.
like, wait, hang on a second. Why is that? What if I find some kid who's a film major and he wants to come in and run one of the cameras in my class and he never
Hmm.
took the class before. And
Right.
why not that? It's just running a camera. Oh, no, you can't be a TA because that's the policy, you know? The
Because he has to have
policy
a
got
certain letter
written that
grade.
way. Yeah, and it's like, wait, hang on, man. Like that's silly. That doesn't account for all these other things, right? And
Right.
that kind of stuff, right? Or, student scholarships. Like you have to sit down and talk to every single student to find out if they're worthy of a scholarship. Who has time to do that, man? You don't have time.
Right.
It's
Right.
like you can't interview 100 people for a single job. You just nail it down, man. You just sort through the resumes and you pick out the 10 people and then you sort through again and you pick out 5 to interview, and that's it. You can't interview 100 or 1,000 people. You're not going to pick the best person for the job. You absolutely are not. You never are.
Right.
So, like this kind of stuff, right? So that's what DE and I is, and
Hmm.
then it becomes really silly. And then when you're somebody who feels like you're at the bottom end of that, like like yeah, like I was saying, like there's almost I had this kid, in class. I was
You
thinking about him the other day.
right?
30 years ago, he was from Maine. He was a poor white kid, man. He was so
Yep.
poor. Like, oh,
Yep.
damn, dude. And Maine is pretty damn poor.
I've
And you know it, right?
I was just gonna yeah, I had a job I had a LinkedIn request application to work for Red Bull when I was still in
Hmm.
sales, and it was in like something Maine. It was like, but I looked up that area. I'm trying to remember where in Maine it was, but they had nothing but like a Paul Bunyan statue.
Yeah.
Like Paul, the guy who chops down the wood, like
Yeah, yeah,
in
yeah,
the
yeah, yeah, yeah.
in the
Listen, I
fables.
love Maine, and I love the
That's all
people
they
of
had.
Maine. It's
Yeah.
very poor. So
Right.
anyway, this kid was poor, and he somehow dreamed to come to Penn State, and he came to Penn State, and they gave him some scholarship money his first year, right? But then
Right.
he had to figure it out. And this school wasn't that expensive back then, but still, the kid was
Hmm.
working 3 jobs, man. The kid was such a
Wow.
hard worker, and he was getting really poor grades because he was tired all the time because he was working 40 to 50 hours a week, and he was just
Right.
poor. He got nothing, but he couldn't
And
get
then coming,
scholarships because he
yeah.
was this white kid. You know what I mean? There was nothing for him, right? And
And the
he
high
was
school
poor.
probably didn't prep,
No, they didn't
you
prep him
know?
for anything. He didn't know how to look
Right.
for scholarships, and it wasn't
Right.
like back 30 years ago. It wasn't like it is now. There was no office that he could go to, and all the scholarships were online. Like you didn't have that, and his family had
Right.
no money, and it was just like Bangor.
Bangor. That's where I
Yeah,
was.
and like,
Yeah.
and the kid was, it was, but there's
Oh,
nothing. There's
and
nothing for him, right? And so imagine you see that. It's just like this is what is this? This is like we're attacking poor white people. We got nothing for poor white people. And after a
right.
while, you see that kind of stuff, and it starts to really. And then you think that that's what all this DEI stuff is about, and then natural, of course. So you're then really pissed, and it's like,
Right.
why wouldn't you
And
be
then
pissed? Yeah,
right, right. Yeah, they, because it feels like this whole population of white people are being excluded.
yeah, 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 yeah. Exactly.
Hmm.
Yeah, it just feels like. Anyway, that's my take, and I see enough DEI non stuff that is not. Hang on, what the heck does it take to get a C in your class? Yeah, no, 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 no. You get a Z to get a C. Let's see. You don't do any of the reading and stuff for the quizzes, and then you just suffer through them. You don't come to class. You don't get your attendance points. And you don't do world and conversation. There's really, yeah, you have to work hard to get a C. Actually, that's not true. The grading scale, you really kind of have to do everything in the class to get an A. And if you even miss a couple little things, like you miss class twice and you don't do the makeup work to get the attendance grades, you go from an A to an A minus. Okay, 3 times. 3 times. You get 100% on the exams, 100% on everything else, and you miss class 3 times and you don't get those do anything to get those points. You're already in an A minus. One more
Wow.
class, you're at a B plus. So it's like, yeah,
Hmm.
you can't. And if you miss class, what you have to do is you have to watch the recording of the class, and you have to make a video recording just like this. And you have to tell us what you got from it.
It
Yeah, it's
seems
a
like so
lot,
much
man.
more
It's a lot of
work
work.
than
It's
just
so
going
much
to
more work.
class.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. But the problem is people get sick, and so like, okay, you're sick, you can
Right.
come, so go for
And
it.
do you get
There's no
freebies?
free absences. No, no
No
freebies,
freebies.
nothing, man.
Got it.
Attendance is an assignment. You don't get to miss an assignment. Yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah,
Hmm.
the fury, the grading system. Every teacher does their own grading. Like this is my own. This is what I've come to after 40 years. I want people in those seats, and I believe that if you come and you sit in those seats, you won't be bored. Like I take stake in that, right? I wouldn't have done this 20 years ago because I couldn't look people in the face with a straight face and say like, Elijah, you need to come to class. Trust me, you'll enjoy yourself, right? I
You
didn't
couldn't
like.
say that?
No, because I'd be like, yeah, whatever. I wouldn't enjoy myself necessarily. So yeah,
That's funny.
yeah, 100% final exam. Yeah,
Did,
that I couldn't do that. That's one of the reasons I never considered law school, ever, because I can't put all my stake in a single exam like that, man. I can never do
wow.
that. That's too much
Wow.
stress.
I didn't know that. That's crazy.
I
There's
can't believe
there's
people do that.
a
Yeah.
few cool questions that were lost. One by
I'm with Eric Sell. Grades, it's a huge failure in education. But yet at the same time, in my class, it's the only thing that gets people to come. My grades are not, like the readings for the exams it's really interesting stuff. It's, like videos, and they're not like sometimes documentaries, but it's just things that are really interesting.
fascinating.
So
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. So uh, it's so yeah, you have to do it, but I expect you to forget it. I don't expect you're not going to remember it, but you'll remember something, and you'll feel good about it, and you'll feel smarter after you do it. So that's kind of
Hmm.
how it is. But yeah, grades
Hmm.
are just oh man.
Yeah, I feel your class just enhances awareness.
Yeah.
Awareness just
Okay. Why do we
is
divide
increased.
minorities into ethnic groups? We don't really have. We do have one for whites, but we don't. First off, we never did. Whites in the as late as the early 19th century, white people were considered to be races. We talked about the white race. So white. It's only in the early part of the 19th century or 20th century, right in the 1900s. Pardon. Uh, that we start to put whites together into a singular group. But you go places like any city, even now, still, you go to Pittsburgh, you have your Italian side, and you have this side and that side. It's like white people are still quite divided into various ethnic groups.
Really?
But as a general, yeah, I mean, the people still talk about it that way. And
Mm,
like in Toledo, I go back. We had the Mexican neighborhood and the Greek section, and this kind of thing, right? So,
right.
um, but eventually we white people started to become a singular group. But same with Hispanics, though, right? Hispanic is a singular group, but that wasn't the case back when we talked about the German race and the Italian race and the French race and the that kind of thing, right? Irish
Hmm.
race. We were doing the same thing with Hispanics, and we still do in the Southwest, right? So uh, it's not like everyone's just Hispanic. And
Like, are you saying like Mexican, Dominican,
yeah,
Venezuelan? Like,
exactly.
we all
Yeah.
just group them?
Yep. Yeah,
Got it.
like in LA, for sure, man. You got it's not you got Hispanics, but everyone is something, and they talk about the something that they are. Same with
Right.
Asians, right? So anyway, that's my answer to that. Uh, is that actually it's kind of uh,
Mm.
it's
It,
it yeah it's complicated, but white people became a singular group at some point in
like
time
just
for sure.
Caucasian, right? Like when you
Hmm.
check that box, it's what are you Caucasian, and the others
Yeah,
are like Pacific Coast or
yeah.
something, and East
Yeah, and
Asian.
it's Caucasian because I think it's Blumenthal. I mean, one of the people that put the racial typographies together
Okay.
back in the 1700s decided that the white people at the base of the Caucasus Mountains were the most beautiful group of white people. So he called the white people Caucasians. That's where that
Because that was
came
the
from.
most beautiful white
Well,
people?
he thought that. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
Really?
yeah. You
Where's
wouldn't
that
think that
located?
today. It's at like northern Turkey, like by Turkey, right there, north of Turkey. Yeah, yeah,
That's
Caucasus Mountains, like
interesting. Wow.
Georgia and Turkey, right in that area, right? So
Wow.
yeah, it's really interesting. So
Wow.
that I mean that yeah,
And
it's
that's
kind
like
of
Middle
crazy.
East, right? Like
Yeah, yeah,
not
yeah, yeah,
kind of Middle East.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
So that's
You're on
not
my.
Italians, that's
Hang
not
on, I'll go point it
Germans,
out.
it's
Can I
not.
point it out on my map? Hang on, Jeff's gonna do it. Yeah. Yeah, yeah. Isn't that the Caucasian Mountains right in there? Yeah. Armenia. Yeah, right in there. Yeah.
Huh.
Yeah. Who would have thought, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. The whole time you were thinking it was the French, but nah, that's right there, man. Those are the most beautiful white people. Anyway, that's how that got pulled up. But
That's interesting.
even now though, I was thinking about this. You go out to California. Yeah, what was I saying? No, I had a different one. I was thinking, oh no, like in
Mm.
in Washington, you have all the Ethiopians in Washington, and they're not black, man. They're Ethiopians, and you have all the Nigerians in Washington, and they're not black. They're Nigerians. So you have Nigerians, Ethiopians, and then you have Eritreans, and you have like So we put these labels out there, but people themselves don't always grab onto those labels.
Hmm. Are you
Like
saying they're not
the
black
kid.
because they're not like African American, or you're
No, they don't
like
see themselves as black. They see themselves, I mean, I
as
was talking to this Ethiopian at
that's
the
right.
Washington airport, right?
Okay.
And when I was there several weeks ago, when we came back from wherever we came back from, I don't remember, Korea, I guess. That was a couple of months ago. Yeah, who was
Like a
Ethiopian. She wasn't black, man.
like a
You
Kenyan
know.
is Kenyan because of
Yeah, but it's not going to
right
be if you're in a Kenyan, if you're in a neighbor and a community where there are lots of people from Kenya, all
then
these
you're
people, like from Nairobi and Kenya, mostly going to be Nairobi here, but they're more likely to really hold that identity. Like,
right
I'm Kenyan. Yeah, that's right. Yeah, I'm from
right
Kenya.
because they don't
So
associate based off of color there, right?
yeah, well, they
Because
do, but they
everyone
don't. Like the kid, like yesterday, Sam. He's like, first in his application, he wrote, I'm African American. And then in the next box, he's like, well, actually, I'm Kenyan American, right? I'm from Kenya. My parents are from Kenya, and I really identify with, no, not Kenya, pardon me, Nigeria. He said, I
Nigeria,
really
yeah.
identify as Nigerian. But he wrote African American. But if you asked his parents, he probably felt guilty after he wrote that because he probably heard his parents in his head
Like
going like, "You're not African
no.
American, dude. You're Nigerian." Right?
Right.
But that's the thing,
Wow,
and that'll
because
change because he'll have kids and he'll just be like, "Yeah, okay, my kids are African American.
right.
I'm new. Can you explain how Elijah fits into the class?" Oh yeah, Elijah, what's your story, man?
Yeah. I'm being called out, man. So my story is I started with World in Conversation in 2017. I was a facilitator for 4 semesters. I fell in love with World in Conversation, just what it did for me, how it developed me, the community that it creates, the culture that all the staff members create for the students, and allow you to have a voice. Fell in love with it. I would say that I was able to get a job because of World in Conversation. Went to the career fair, did sales. Did that because I wanted to make music, and I wasn't ready to go to grad school yet. And then I was a part of the community in the corporate world. I wasn't a fan of sales. I think it's amazing for those that are able to navigate the corporate world, because it can be intense. It wasn't for me, so I reached out to Laurie very many times. I was a part of all the post alumni facilitation programs
Yeah,
that
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Laurie
yeah.
offered, and I just loved facilitating. I wanted to eventually pivot myself in the corporate world to be like a trainer or somehow get into like DEI or HR
Yeah.
because it was closer to what I was passionate about. But there was an opportunity that opened up at World in Conversation to be a trainer and to continue to teach facilitation to the upcoming students at World in Conversation. So I was able to get that job opportunity. And since I'm working at World in Conversation, there was just many different places that I was put into, given my skill set and role. And just one of those opportunities, I've been blessed to work with Sam and work with him in the podcast.
And
And
hop
so
on here,
here I
man.
am. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I'm hopping off the
Yeah,
couch.
because it's really hard. It's really difficult for me. I have to really. It's really works to have somebody who I'm talking to, and I have to have someone who's can ask a lot of questions and who also will ask questions, a
Basic
beginner's
questions
mind
that,
questions. You're
yeah.
really able to
Hmm.
do that. Yeah,
Hmm.
yeah, yeah. You're
Because
really
I
able
don't
to do
know.
that. Yeah,
There's a lot that I don't know, and so essentially I can just be that person. If there's people that are viewing that also don't know, maybe I can ask the
yeah.
question that others are wondering, um,
No,
or
what you
not.
do is
You know, but
look it's just a dynamic, right? Like you bring something out in me. You make me you release thoughts in me that I haven't thought about maybe in years or decades, right? It just
right,
comes out and stuff. So, hey, thanks
right.
Fury, by the way, for your contribution. Hey, we have a couple
Yeah, thanks for the
questions from
question.
class, right? Fury,
Yep.
yeah, I really appreciate it. Yeah, I like that. I gotta be over to the Netherlands soon, and sooner than later. I really have some to come see our our team. All right, what do we got? Anne from Canada said, when the CEO interviews equivalent qualifications, degrees, job experience, etc. Is that when DEI would be brought in? Yeah, I think, yeah, like, well, here's the thing, right? And this is what I would say. We have these, this isn't true across the board, okay? But we all have subconscious biases, okay? So you can't stop that. And you can't excavate them. So we pull them all out by the roots, but we all have certain subconscious biases, okay? And then we all have more conscious biases, but we definitely have subconscious biases. Like, for example, women being referees in professional sports, basketball, football, umpires in baseball. Like, well, why can't they be referees? All you got to make is a quick decision. You know what I mean? It doesn't take a lot. You can grow up watching sports and have love of the sports. And I met women when I was young who just had an understanding of football and basketball. They didn't even play it. Many play, but well, I mean, football, but they had an understanding. It was like, damn, that's pretty intense. Well, why can't you be a referee? Well, we started putting referees out on the field in a football game or a basketball game, and there's a lot of pushback. Like, why are women doing that? It's like, well, what's that bias that you have? You don't even know you have. Stop and think about it for a second. Like, why wouldn't women do that? Lori and I were at the Naval Academy, or not the Naval not the Naval Academy, the Naval Weapons Center. I forget where it was. Ah, damn it. Up in Providence, Rhode Island. Anyway, we did a workshop up there for a couple of days. And there was a woman who was a helicopter pilot, like an Apache attack helicopter. And she had been in Afghanistan and stuff. And like, that's pretty intense, man. She was like, she didn't seem like a badass because she's just this person who was one of the people who we were working with that brought us in, right? But I'm like, she saw a lot of battle, and she was badass. Like, you just knew that, right?
Wow.
Like, it was just like, dude, you don't just get that position, you earn that position, man.
Wow.
And it's just like, but if you don't know that, if you're not part of the military, and you hear this like current thing of like women should not be in combat roles, yeah, tell it to this woman, man. You go ahead and sit down with this woman. Well, I can watch her do what she does, and I'll bet any man that worked with her would be like, yo, man, you can fly me anywhere. You know what I mean? I'll trust that you're going to get me wherever we need to go and do it safely, right? And Rich, who's going to be in class in a couple months, one of the main people on his team, they will go out on night raids in Afghanistan. Night raids, man, this is really dangerous. You're going out
What's
at night.
a night raid?
Night raid is when they're going knocking on doors. They're going to find bad guys at their homes while they're sleeping. So they're knocking on doors and they're banging. They're going into people's houses. The Taliban, the people planting the bombs on the road, trying to kill them, and killing other Afghans and stuff, right? So he had this one woman on his team, and he's like, damn, man, she was such a badass. Like, you just trusted her at every single level, right?
Wow.
Okay, well, where's the subconscious bias? So there's bias there, right? So now, man, I'm responding to the question. It's like, well, imagine we're gonna have bias for CEOs too. Like, we're gonna see it. So like, you kind of, it's not that we don't need DEI per se, but you want DEI. The way it happens at Penn State is it will be like, hey, we're gonna hire for this job. And then here are the 10 people that we're thinking about, and they're going to look it over and be like, okay, well, how come there are no, here's the 3 that we're going to pick. And then they'll come back and say, well, I noticed there's no women in this pile, or there's nobody of color in this pile. Was there nobody that was qualified? Well, there's nobody who you didn't overlook. And the question isn't that, they're not assuming that there was. They're telling you, and this is the DEI thing, right? This is like affirmative action. They're taking a step in the affirmative step to say, wait, hang on. are you sure you really looked at this? Like, you didn't just like go through and he'd be like, yeah, no, seriously, this is fun. Then it's okay. They're not going to say like, oh, you have to interview somebody, but they're not going to pick like a white. If you pick all people of color, well, maybe they might come back and say, wait, why aren't there any white people in this file? Like, were there no white people applying? Then well, they would do the same
Right.
damn thing, you know? So it's that kind of thing. So a lot of programs are things like that, that are a lot of things are just like, hey, we just want to make sure you're thinking about this stuff, right?
Mm-hmm.
This guy in the wheelchair, it's like, you know, people, we know that people have a subconscious bias about people in wheelchairs, right? You're going to come into work every single day and you're in a wheelchair, okay? Like Matt, who was in class last semester.
Right.
And it's like, wait, are you, did you really consider this person who uses a wheelchair? Like, did you really consider him? That's the kind of stuff. That's a lot of the stuff that happens. Okay, that's the good
Mm-hmm.
stuff that happens, right?
Yeah, I was gonna say I appreciate that, like what you're saying.
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
That's like that's
that
fine.
aspect.
That's a good thing. So
Mm. But it
so
goes too.
that's
Okay.
yeah, but the problem is if you try to make it mandatory and you
Mm.
mandate it for an entire organization, like for every 3 people you interview, one of them must be a minority of some way. It's like, man, that's a problem because
Right.
the what you don't know who the pool of applicants is, right? So that's just when you try to mandate stuff in a large way.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where it
Mm-hmm.
starts to fall apart.
Mm.
And yeah.
If if
Yeah.
if the
Wait, hang on.
pool.
I want to ask this. The Muse
Yeah.
says, how do you think Americans would have reacted to women pilots in the Hanoi Hilton during the Vietnam War? I think probably, well, if it was back then, it would be very different. But I think, by the way, I was at the Hanoi Hilton in November. Lori and I were there.
Is
Uh,
that what you talked about? Yeah,
yeah,
when you were
yeah,
looking at all of the plaques.
yeah, the plaques and stuff.
Uh,
Yeah.
yeah.
Uh, I think Americans would have probably felt more protective. Like these women need to be protected more. But I would tell you that this woman I met up in from the Nate who flew the Apache, she didn't need to be protected by any. She didn't need anyone's protection, man. I was like, yeah, I wouldn't want to be in her way. She was, and she didn't look like it. I just knew that she was, yeah, Saber Wolf, the cult of personality that surrounded Paterno. I don't. I was part of that. So yes, I have talked about Paterno. In fact, Lori and I were very much at ground zero when all that happened. In fact,
Mm.
you should know that when Paterno was fired, um, 2 things happened. The night that he got fired, I knew he was going to get fired, and I called. We were working on a television show for PBS. Actually, it was called "You Can't Say That." It was in. We were filming it in my class. It's kind of like, well, now
Oh,
that evolved into our live stream, but
that's
it was
cool.
a 6-part series. And anyway, we were filming, and it never made it to PBS. It won an Emmy award, but it never made it to PBS. If it aired on the World Channel, 1 episode. That was it. We only did 1 episode, and then
And that got an
the
Emmy?
university. Yeah, that got the Emmy award, but
That's cool.
the series, the university pulled the plug. But in any case, the night that we were filming the next day, and we were going to talk about these issues like affirmative action and stuff, right? And I called the producer and I said, we can't talk about this. We got to talk about Paterno getting fired because he's going to get fired tonight. I knew that, you know. And they're like, all right. So they filmed anyway, and then we made a documentary based on the
Hmm.
class on
Hmm.
Paterno's firing. But Lori and
How?
I never allowed them to release it uh, because there's so much division on both. We didn't take sides. We just were examining things, the whole thing, on both
Hmm.
ways, like the Paterno, the more pro and con. I mean, it was very difficult back then because it was all really new. No one knew the hell happened, you know?
Right.
So, but we pulled the plug on it because we knew that we were just going to make enemies one way or the other. So anyway, so the point
Ha-
is, we were very much a ground zero. And then when the new president came on, Jeff,
I was just wondering how students nowadays at Penn State feel about Paterno and the legacy around it, because
they have
when
no
I was
idea.
coming into Penn State, it was like 2 years after he was fired, and everybody still knew
Mm,
Paterno, and everyone was still, saying 409, and like it was at the
yeah,
time the statue was taken down, but people would put up a bobblehead every Saturday. Like that was the
yeah,
atmosphere then, and I'm wondering how it's evolved over the past like almost 20, 15, 20 years, something like that, 10 years at least.
yeah. It's very. And even you were a Penn State fan. You were from Pennsylvania. You were a Penn State fan
Oh
before
yeah,
you
big
even
time.
got here. Uh, Students now, they don't have any idea who he was. Unless you're from State College or have some deep connection to Penn State and Penn State football through your parents or grandparents or something. Most students have no idea. They don't know. So they
how are
don't
you in
talk
the
about it. It's a
mm,
non-issue. Anyway, but going back one final thing. So the president Spanger also got fired when Paterno got fired. And so the new president was named, and when he was being named, they announced it on a Tuesday or on a Thursday. I don't know whatever it was, but he called me, got a call from his office saying, "Hey, could you come to Social 19 and could you present the president to the university from Social 19? Saying, hey, this is the new president. Rod Erickson was his name, and so I did. So and then Lori and we facilitated the town hall. That was a live town hall about the whole thing that was broadcast across the state of Pennsylvania. So the point being, I'm very much have been in the center of it, of that. We were early on. So, and I
yeah,
would
how'd you
say, what's that?
I was just wondering how you two got involved, like how you were in the center of that.
Well, I think it's just because of who we are. Uh, yeah, that's the. I think it's because of who Lori and I are and had been at the university up until that time. That we're very much, we're there like for students. Like Social 19 is a place that students know about, and it's a safe space, right? So it's really,
Hmm.
yeah, it was really intense. It was such an intense class, man. It was the most intense class we've ever done. And anyway, except the day of 9/11, that was actually okay. So those two classes. I want to go back to the question though. I didn't hear. I don't remember what the question was. Uh, that I was answering. I got lost about the cult of personality. Yeah. Okay.
Hmm.
There, the cult of personality. You know, I wouldn't. I wouldn't call. I don't know that I would call it that. I would say. I mean, living here, and there, it was very different back then. We didn't have social media in the same way, right? It's sort of at the very end of Paterno's time, but
I mean, were people
I don't.
scared that were involved?
I think a lot of like with students and people, they were just like they didn't know what was going on. They didn't have. They came in and it happened so fast, and overnight there were 20 television satellite trucks lined up on College Avenue, and all these reporters walking around trying to get the story and talking to everybody, and mind you, we just lost the coach is fired, the president's fired. People are calling for the Penn State University to the end of Penn State University. It should be closed down. People are calling for that. Like that was just you got to understand. This was like this narrative, right? Football will go away forever. For sure. That was just like there will be no more Penn State football. And the university should go away forever. And the hate was just unbelievable, man. And everywhere students went, like when they went home for Thanksgiving, they came back and they're just like, man, anytime I wore any kind of Penn State gear, people were yelling at me and, oh, you go to pedophile university. And people, God, it was just God. One of the things that happened, and you'll see this, is that people started to circle the wagons a little bit. So then our white students, strangely enough, for the first time they got racism. Lori would say this all the time. They really started to understand black and brown students because they were like, just like black and brown students will just kind of be sometimes just be bold to be like, F you, man. Like if you're going to act in some kind of way toward me, like in the same way that people in the South will wear Confederate flags and stuff because the people in the South feel like they're judged so harshly by people in the North because all the white people in the South, of course, they're all racist, because you're from the South and you all have Confederate flags. And of course, this is just this narrative that just gets pushed. It's not pushed it's not really true that it's pushed, obviously, but a lot of people feel it, and so they start wearing Confederate flags just as an FU. Well, right. Our white students started wearing their Penn State gear over Thanksgiving, over Christmas, everywhere, and they would just wear it proudly, almost like, I dare you to say anything about Penn State. You know what I mean? I dare you. Not as a way that, not because I'm proud of. I support Joe Paterno or I support whatever. It just is like
out of retaliation to the hate.
Out of retaliation, just I dare you to do that. In the same way that, a lot of people in the South maybe will put a Confederate flag on their truck or something. Like, yeah, I dare you to come at me like that. I'm from the South, so who are you? Anyway, that was like that was a thing that was really fascinating to hear white people take that on.
That's so interesting because that's like the reaction of being misunderstood, like in some way being misunderstood.
Exactly. Yeah, exactly. And so, I have black men, a lot of black men who feel the fear from other people, right? It's like, wait, why are you afraid of me? Like, who am I? Like this kid yesterday, Sam, he's just like, he's a nice guy, and then but suddenly like people respond to them in some way, and so then maybe they will be like, he's going to put up a certain wall because of that, let's say, right? And so anyway, that's the kind of thing. So
wow,
this is what makes human beings so interesting, and I'm really so thankful that I've had this opportunity over the course of my life
to experience people
to experience so many different people. Yeah. And to be able to understand all of these different things. And I love being able to go to that class yesterday, the DEI class, and be like, here's the problem with DEI, right? Here's the good thing about DEI, and just be like, well, what the hell? What's this guy saying? Here's what DEI is. Like, I'm going to talk about this
now,
I don't know. Yeah, my position is
well, not you, but like to them.
Yeah, do you have a position? Yeah, exactly. Yeah, what's your position? And like, I just want you to be, but Trump, one of the most important kind of DEI, which is kind of interesting, by the way. One of the biggest DEI initiatives it came from Donald Trump, man, in 2020. It was the Defense Board on Diversity and Inclusion. The Defense Board on Diversity and Inclusion. Donald Trump's team, they organized that. That was like it happened after George Floyd. Okay. And they were just like and not after George Floyd. It took off it happened before George Floyd, but wait, when was George Floyd? When did George Floyd die?
Yeah, I think that was 2020, 2021, I think.
Yeah, okay, so its first meeting was, I think,
May 25th, 2020.
Yeah, okay, so the first meeting of this organization happened after George Floyd, right? It was in July. And and its entire purpose was, hey, we got to we got to figure all this out. How much racism is there in the military? How much sexism? How many problems are there? Donald Trump, man, he signed off on that. You know what I mean? This is DEI. This is a major DEI initiative. And so now we're like, oh, okay, hang on. What the hell? What was that about? You can look it up. Defense Board on Diversity and Inclusion. This is the stuff, right, that I kind of
Wait, still, what
yeah,
is
yeah,
that?
he's not Ian. He's not in a literal sense. No, he's not. And this is one of those things where he's just going. What he really wants to do is go after the extreme examples, which is the same thing that I want to go after. As many of us don't like, right? These things where
Right.
you just, it's a sweeping policy change. It's like, oh, come on, man. We don't need a
Right.
sweeping policy change. So what we need is to target certain things. Yeah.
Mhm.
Anyway, that's
Is it possible to like readjust or like pivot when something is already in place? A DEI, like the
it's
DEI
probably
policies?
difficult. To Trump's credit, honestly, it's probably very difficult. It's a lot easier just to knock something to the ground and start over in some way than it is to just fine tune it, really. It's like, you try to fix a broken relationship. Okay, why don't we work on this and why don't we work on that? And when it's like, oh, dude, you know what we need to do? We just need to break up. Maybe in 10 years we'll come back together or something. But really, honest to God, yeah,
We just need space.
yeah, yeah,
Got it.
yeah.
Got it.
This is yeah. So I mean, to credit. I mean, I'm speaking as a sociologist, right? Systems want to reproduce themselves, whether they're technological systems or biological systems or social systems, whatever it is. Systems want to reproduce themselves. They don't want to
What does that
change
mean?
because it's like a car engine. The thing, once the wheels start rolling, it's hard to get them to stop. They just are going. Everything is like, it's like, imagine that you got all these belts going, and it's like a. You ever watch a paddle wheel windmill, like that's a paddle wheel that the water just keeps entering the paddle, and then the water goes up, and then the weight of the water keeps it going, and it just keeps going and going. That's like a system that it just wants to keep going.
Right.
And so systems don't like change at all. They like stability and stasis. And
So if that's
in
you
fairness,
put,
go ahead.
so if you like take that analogy and place it, and think of like a corporate company or like a company, you're saying that if reproducing itself, how is it like how would you say the company?
Yeah. So how you gonna
same?
you're gonna have to fine tune some new policy. Hey, here's what we need to do. We need to really rethink the way we're, just kind of thinking about how we treat one another inside the company, or how we elevate people from one level to the next. How are promotions done? Who's getting promoted? On what basis are they getting promoted? And like, can we rethink how this is done? Okay. So
And
yeah, we can do that, but we're gonna have the same people doing it. They're gonna think like they've always thought, because this is what we do. It's just really difficult for us to think differently, and so we're gonna try to make a change, and then before we know it, we're gonna be back. This is like
so,
like
it's like when you have
yeah.
like with
Go
what?
ahead.
I was just gonna say when you have personnel that just have the same fixed mindset, or like personnel that don't want to change, or I'm not sure if that's it.
Well, part of it is they don't want to change, but part of it is it's just very difficult to change, man. Those of you who golf, it's like changing your grip on your golf club. You have to work on my thumb is so used to, like, I have a certain grip. Wait, hang on, right there. I have a certain grip, the way I grip my club, and I try to change it. And if I don't think about it every second, I change it, so now I got a new grip. It just goes back to the old grip. I've gripped my club so many times like that God, it's so hard to change. Even though I want to change, and I'm looking at it, and before I know it, I look down and I got my old grip. And I was like, wow, what the hell? What's going on here? So it's stuff like that,
Got
That's a singular thing. But now imagine a whole system like that.
Right.
Yeah.
Nobody can change their grip.
No. When you think about one of these golfers who changes their swing after they've been golfing for a long time, man, that's not just an overnight thing, man. That's a whole swing. That swing is a system, man. That
Right.
is amazing. And then they got to learn the new one, and they've got to,
Right.
yeah,
That's like you're shooting like how you shoot,
yeah,
like it takes
exactly,
so much
yeah,
to change.
yeah. It's that right there, yeah.
Hmm.
All right, wait. Do we have any more questions from yesterday? God, we do, right?
Definitely.
Southeastern asked, when you visit a multicultural center, you oftentimes don't find white people there. Yeah, because white people feel like it's not for them. And this is the problem. Like, we've created a world, and people of color are just as responsible as white people for this. So, I mean, maybe I think humans are, yeah, we're all responsible for it, right? We somehow think that things maybe aren't for us or whatever, right? And usually welcome, if you go to, we're going to be welcome. Go find some little, uh, I don't know, Lauren ate at this. It was, yeah, you're going to be welcome. No one's people aren't going to say, like, what are you doing here? You know, you go to a restaurant where, like, it's only, I don't know. I remember I went to this. I was with a buddy of mine. We were in Israel, and we were in the Arab quarters, and we went to this little hummus restaurant, and it was all Arabs in there, 100% Arabs, man. And we went in, and all the eyes were on us because he's Jewish, and they had probably just assumed I was Jewish, uh, and everyone's watching us, right? And we're like, oh, all right. It was just an interesting thing. It was one of the only experiences that I had in Israel, because Israel is very integrated, strangely enough. I mean, Israel proper.
Hmm. Israel proper.
Yeah, I mean, well,
What's that term?
the metropolitan areas, like around Tel Aviv, and so, yeah, hang on, it's too complicated. Israel's and Palestine, the West Bank and Gaza, it's way too complicated. I don't want to get into what I mean to say, what I want to say, but
Hmm.
anyway, but people were like, before we knew it, man, people were telling us, like, they were ordering for us, they were like, they were so happy we were there. It's like, wait, what are you doing
Right.
here? Like, wait, we're so happy you're here. Like, why are you here? Wait, we're so happy. It was back and forth. And they were ordering food for us and all sorts of stuff, right?
Hmm.
So I think what I want to say is that uh, that's a really, really great question. And I think that somehow people feel like it's not interesting, or we don't develop an interest in it. Yeah.
I was gonna
Those,
ask,
yeah.
what do you do? What is required, or like what mediation, or like needs to be required for those that feel that like I have this space now because you've taken too many spaces, and so now I deserve a space of my own.
Yeah, okay. Well, there's
And
also
like,
that narrative, but that's a fairly rare. I think you would say, wouldn't you agree? That's a pretty rare narrative that people of color have. Really,
yeah,
there's going
it's
to be
like it
some
seems like
people.
niche to like things like for like multicultural centers or like places that are
Yeah,
like specific racial
yeah,
groups, and it's like I finally get a space of my own, so this is, or at least that feels like that's some of the narratives that I've heard before, or
yeah.
like this
No,
is my
like
space.
at Penn
And
State, it's some of the center, like the Paul Robeson Center,
yeah.
which is generally for students of color, right?
Hmm. And
White
it's like,
white
what do
kids will
we
go
need
there
to?
and hang out. But
Yeah.
you mostly aren't going to go there if you're white, unless you're going there with somebody,
Yeah.
right? And, like, okay, well, that's kind of fair in a way, right? It's a pretty white camp, although it's less white. It's every year it's less and less white, right? But
Hmm.
you're gonna be like, people. But it also changes. People these days, students of color these days, don't have near the sense of I need a space where I can feel it, like I'm at home. That's just not the same anymore.
Hmm.
Far more kids are coming from, I mean, lots of communities are segregated, very segregated. We're as segregated, schools are as segregated today as they were 30 years ago. But so many of the students coming to Penn State are coming from more integrated communities. Not very many are coming from all Black or all Hispanic or all Asian or whatever schools. That's just
Right.
it's not happening. And so people aren't coming here going like, oh, I need a space for myself where I feel I can just kind of relax into myself. And I think white people would understand that if you, it's like, if you lived abroad and you had this little spot. I tell the story when I lived in Cuenca, and there was this little place that would, for Americans, and they would bring the New York Times. They would fly it in every day and that kind of stuff. Well, it was always a couple days late, but and I could just go there and I could just see Time Magazine, New York Times, Wall Street Journal, Washington Post, this kind of thing. And I could just
Like a
sit down
place
and
for an
open the news.
American.
Dude, for an American, anybody could go there, but damn, did it feel nice when I just walked in the door and I grabbed that copy of the New York Times, and I'm just like, yeah, I got that. It just
Right.
felt good,
Right.
So what can I say? I mean, that's just what it is, right? And so when you have that, it's just comfortable, if you're Irish or you're whatever it is, you just like, oh God, a little bit of Ireland here,
Right.
So. You have a
So-
favorite Irish bar you go to, and it's lots of Irish expats, and then you suddenly go there, and there are all these non-Irish there, and you're like, wait, hang on a minute, this is a place I go every couple of weeks, and it's just I feel like I'm at home. And now I show up, and there are all these people who are non-Irish in here, and I know it's not my bar, but I feel some kind of way about it. It's like, come
This
on.
is you?
No, I just like this would be an example that maybe a white person could understand about that, about what you're saying, about the example you gave.
Right.
And you can't fault people. You see that, okay, I get it.
Right.
You're Jewish and you're like, you just don't want to. You don't want to hear any like little, even a subtle comment about Jews. Like it's just like, let me just be around a bunch of Jews right now, Jewish people, and I don't have to hear. I just don't want to hear a comment. That's all. A little joke, a little this, a little that. I just want to be right here. Or like if you're part of the gay or lesbian community, that's less true these days, but very much has been true. Having a gay club, it's like I just want a place where I can go. So
Right.
anyway, that's a thing.
Yeah. Yeah.
That's the tribalism thing, but it's like
And
but it's people. Most people want integration in most parts of their lives, but most of us want some space where we can go, where we can really feel comfortable with a certain aspect of our lives, and
Yeah,
that's good.
You mentioned the gay club or whatever. The only gay bar in State College, where Penn State is called Chumley's. And Chumley's is not excluded to anybody. It's just, at least again, the conversation that used to happen is, oh, straight people don't want to go because they might feel like they're getting checked out by people and that makes them feel
Yeah.
uncomfortable. But it wasn't like the gay people in there were like, are you straight or are you gay? Because if you're not gay, then you're not allowed in here because that breaks the rules and that doesn't make us feel safe. Like, that wasn't part of the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, and even if it was, it's like, well, I mean, again, it's different these days, right? Hey, by the way, I want to respond to James Anthony's comment right there. It's okay. There's a lot of spaces we can all go, so it's like, yeah. All right, James Anthony. That HBCUs, yeah, they do actually. HBCUs will offer a lot of HBCUs have scholarship money for white people. I tell this to students who don't have a lot of money and they need scholarship money. I'm like, well, go. You can go to an HBCU. You got scholarships because you're white. You'll be able to do that. And they deal with this for sure. Yeah, so that's kind of cool if you think about it. I have never visited a juke joint. I don't think I have. Maybe I have. Maybe I have. In the South back in the day. Dang. I was in Louisiana. I spent some time in Louisiana, a little bit of time. Anyway, all right. Do we have another question? What does diversity add if it's forged via quotas, et cetera, as versus being free flowing? Yeah. Yeah. Well, the problem with if it's forced, you're actually in a way you're making it harder because people are going to feel that force and they're going to resist it. The problem with it being free flowing and voluntary is that so many people are just going to say, we're not ready yet. We're not ready yet. We're not ready yet. I remember there's this great video. You can find it. The governor of Faber from Mississippi, I think, and he's talking to John F. Kennedy. They were integrating the schools of Mississippi. It's from that series, the PBS series on the civil rights movement. And it's a phone call, and Kennedy is like going to send the troops in because they won't integrate the schools. And Faber, the governor, has called out the National Guard, and Kennedy says, well, you were going to call them back because we're bringing the federal troops in, and these schools are going to get integrated. And the governor is saying to him, but we're just not ready yet, right? This has been going on for months and months and months. And Kennedy says, Governor, when will you be ready? He said, I can't tell you that, Mr. President, but we're just not ready yet. He's like, when will you be ready? I need a date, Governor. I need a date. I can't give you a date, Mr. President. It's just not yet, right? And not yet. And that date, actually, if he'd have been honest with the date, he would have said in 100 years, right? Because there wasn't a date. There was no way they were going to do that. And so my answer then to that question is like, the problem is some people are never going to be ready. Women will never, ever be ready for any kind of combat in the military. It's never going to be a time. Okay, well, then therefore, we're just going to make it happen, here. Because we got enough women who want to go fight, and we got enough men who are perfectly willing to fight next to women. They don't have a problem with that at all. So who's got the problem with it? If you don't want your daughter fighting, then she doesn't have to join.
Right.
And if you don't want to fight next to women, then don't join the military. That's what it is. So, or join, and you can join, but you'll be in a unit where there aren't women. There are enough men that will fight next to women. They don't care. Right. So be quiet.
So there needs to be some sort of force, or not force, but maybe not force, but like what you're saying from that is if there's not some type of like implementation or authority, then there's like complacency or just avoidance of like furthering progress.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, so that's part of what the mandatory stuff can be. And you can't, in Misty Rain, and women are held to the same standards. Women don't have, it's not like, your rucksack is going to, instead of 80 pounds, your rucksack is going to be 40 pounds. It's not like that. So it's, it's quite, I've had many, talked to many people in the military and who've been in the military with women. And I've never had anybody say like, hey, I'd been against it. You know what I mean? So like, what's the problem, man? I'm sure there are, but I just haven't had the experience. Yeah.
Women in the military have lower standards.
So anyway, the thing is, women don't do every single role. And that's really important. So like, okay, women don't have every single role. That's different. But you got a lot of roles in the military, man. Like, so what's the problem? There are a lot of jobs, non-combat jobs, and even combat jobs. There are a lot of jobs that have very, very different roles. Right. So anyway, we'll talk about that later in the semester. So.
Oh, really? That'll be.
Yeah. We'll talk about that. It's with every job. Okay. When does DEI cross the line in discrimination in the workforce? Well, it crosses the line when it crosses the line. That's what it is, right? So there's there an infinite number of examples of DE&I, right? So it there's no singular thing that is an example of that. So you can only say it crosses the line when it does. So
But
how
that
about
crossing
that?
the line example, when you said there needs to be a mandatory, like 1 in every 3 applicants needs to
Well,
be,
that wouldn't always
is
cross
that
the line anyway, and there'll be certain situations in which I'm sure everybody who's listening would agree that, like, no, in that situation, you could say, like, no, you have to have, you need to interview one person for every 3 people. It's one person's got to be Hispanic. I mean, there's so many examples. I mean, I used to show this video in class. It was this one particular company that was in a community that was 90% Hispanic, and the workers in the company were the kind of lower level non-supervisory workers were 90% Hispanic,
but the
and the
upper level,
supervisory workers right above them were like 10% Hispanic, and they were like, how are your workers here? Oh, they're great. We have the greatest workforce forever. Well, they're not good enough to move into supervisory roles. Like, what is that? It's like, well, we have things, and then we have this, and they was just stumbling along. And the person who was investigating discrimination really started talking to lots and lots of people, and walked away concluding, like, no, you're going to have to bring Hispanic workers into supervisory roles. This is crazy, right? I mean, and the person was so reasonable, and the people they were talking to, this was a video that I used in class, were so reasonable and so thoughtful. You just sort of left going like, yeah, that's not cool, right there,
that's
man.
discrimination. Right.
That's a problem, But it's a problem when we say, the city of Detroit in the early 1990s needs Black police officers because there's just a crisis. There's not enough Black police officers, and the city of Detroit waives the test for a certain part of the test for some officers, right, who happen to be Black. And I'm like, no, you can't do that, man. Like, you just got to go out and work harder to get Black police officers to apply. There were all sorts of, there are things like that, right? So, like, okay, that's not cool.
You should waive the test, like they would waive.
Yeah, it was just a part of the test. It's like, well, you don't have to take this test if you don't, feel like it applies to you. It's like, wait, hang on a second, what? I mean, there were just things, right? But again, people just sometimes don't make smart decisions, right?
Right.
So anyway, that was, yeah. Yeah, right. And if it's somebody who's white and Hispanic, it's just, oh my God, it's so crazy. All right, man. Do we have another question? YouTube comments. All right, I would love to see the execution of DEI into a framework that accounts more for social. Yeah, totally. The best DEI accounts for socioeconomic status. That being said, most current research shows that diversity of opinion contributes to the efficacy of shared decision making. Yep, absolutely. And the diversity of opinion emerges from a person's sociocultural background. Yep. Well, it's one part of diversity of opinion is sociocultural background. But the truth is, when we put together various groups of people based on their ancestry or culture or whatever, there's an immense amount of diversity of opinion. I think diversity. So my sociocultural background informs the opinions I have about things, but that doesn't mean they're going to be the same as people of my sociocultural background. Yeah. So yeah, that's a really cool comment. I like that. That's a thoughtful comment. At what point would DEI stop, or would it's going to go on forever? It's never going to stop. And the reason it's never going to stop is because human beings have different identities that we attach ourselves to. And we're going to be endlessly figuring out how to work together and operate together on the basis of with those identities in play. We're always going to be dealing with that. So it's going to be something. It's going to be gender, it's going to be disability status, it's going to be age, it's going to be lots and lots of things. So we're always going to be managing that. And the people who are managing people in organizations, companies, business, whatever it is, we're going to, because we have to manage that, it's all some element of diversity and equity and inclusion is always going to be part of the palette, especially equity, because people, Americans like, just here in the United States, Americans, we like equity, right? We want it. We see the underdog. You see this. Look at these GoFundMe pages that happen, and something happens to some homeless guy, and he gets a haircut, and someone's like, "Oh my God, look at this!" And now he needs a car, and then there's a GoFundMe page for him, and then suddenly there's $30,000, and people want to support the underdog, man, and they want that, and people want. So we want to do special things for people who we think are special. And so equity is always a part of things. And yeah, so that's I don't know, that's a thing that I'm always kind of coming back to. That's the one cool thing about the it's true all across the world, by the way. So this is not special with the US at all, but I think we jump on it more. Yeah. Yeah, protect the white race. I think what we want to protect is we want white people to feel empowered to be able to talk about what it is to be white. And people of color truly want white people to feel empowered to be able to talk about what it means to be white. And how it is, and all the different dimensions of whiteness. So there is an empowerment for the sake of everybody. There's an empowerment when white people can really be who they are and talk about it more openly. I will say that. And it has great value, because then, white people are operating honestly and thoughtfully, and that's what everybody wants. But when we shut white people down, then we lose something. And yeah, how about that? I don't know. When are we going to have a lecture about the situation in the DRC? You know what? It's kind of interesting, because the other night I listened to an hour-long program on the DRC and Rwanda. By the way, in the past, I taught a class on war, and I talked about DRC, I talked about Rwanda, I talked about genocide, all sorts of stuff. And but this documentary I was listening to, it was in the middle of the night. I woke up in the middle of the night. It was like 3 a.m, and I just had it in my earphones, and they were just talking about the current real crisis in the DRC. It's the same crisis that's been happening for 20 years, but it's just it's sort of reached a new level, in part because of the president of Rwanda has sort of heightened the tensions a little bit, Kagame. Anyway.
And what does DRC stand for? Just
Democratic Republic of the Congo.
got it. Okay.
And which is not the Congo. And in the well, you know what? I'll do something. Yeah, let me do something. Yeah. We used to I'll do something. I really need to do something. I can't wait until it. Okay. All right. You got it. Thanks for asking that. Any other comments? Why does he need to bro and toot everyone all the time? You know what, man? I don't know why. I just because it's just my way of being me, man. I can't. If you
that's just Sam right there. Come on.
But okay, listen, Elijah, you've stood in front of that room, right?
Yeah.
You know, like how how,
It's a lot. How?
it's a lot, man.
Yeah.
And the cameras are going and people are talking in my ear and I'm trying to make it happen. And I'm trying to be so balanced and thoughtful. And the the easiest way for me to do that is just be me.
Yeah.
And so people say like, oh, he's not like, he's n- he's not professional. It's like, oh fuck, of course I'm not professional. If I was professional, I'd be reading from PowerPoint slides, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
I mean, none of this would be happening, right? No
Yep.
professional would ever bring students up in front of the room and talk to them and have the conversations we're having. None of this would happen. And
Yep.
so like, yeah, so
I
like,
wonder.
yeah, that's
Yeah. I mean, it just you being you makes the class authentic. You being authentic makes the class even more authentic. So
yeah,
yeah. And
I
I wonder
just
if they'd
can't. I
be
try not to.
The
really.
only thing. The only thing I wanted to add is the same thing with your earrings. People sometimes comment about, "Oh, why does he have earrings? Does he want to be cool? He shouldn't do things because other people tell him." And I'm like, "But you're telling him to take the earrings out that he's had since he was
That's
in his early
18 years
20s or
old.
18, right?"
that's what I'm
Like,
saying. If you're wearing earrings, you're wearing them because of Sam. No.
yeah, I started
No.
this, man.
Right.
It's so funny. Yeah. Hey, you know what? Check this out though. Des Moines. Yeah, I'm just, I don't know. I try to tone it back a little bit, but I call Lori bros, and I'm like, yo, bro, check this out, and then I realize, I just called my wife bro, or
I wonder if,
dude. I call her dude. She calls me dude. It's just the thing.
yeah, and I wonder if they'd be saying that like if it was you when you had your long hair and
Ah, yeah, yeah, yeah,
like
yeah,
you've been doing it for so long, like
yeah,
you're probably saying bro and dude when you had the. And plus,
yeah.
also, it makes students
Forever.
comfortable. I feel like
I
students
don't know. I
basically can
actually
relate
think
to you.
sometimes it makes them uncomfortable until they really understand that I'm not putting on an act. This is me.
Mm.
When I see them on the street, I'm like, yo, bro. I saw a guy in the gym actually from last semester, and he was one of the volunteers, and I was doing work. I was working out, and I
Uh-huh.
was on a machine, and he's like, "Yo, Sam, what's up?" I'm like, "Yo, bro." I didn't remember his name, so bro is just like, okay, bro is good. It's like, dude, bro, whatever. I don't know.
Yeah,
So like, I can't. It's a lot of
that
people
ha
to remember names.
that happened with
They, yeah,
Franklin and I in the gym too.
yeah.
You were doing bicep curls,
Oh yeah,
and then you
yeah,
saw
yeah.
Franklin and I, and
Oh yeah.
yeah,
And I was like, yo.
like, dude, what's up? Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, James Anthony. Yeah, I'll say, yo, babe, yo, sweetheart. One time it's just not really as a joke. It was just this. So here's the deal. Sometimes there are some students that I can really joke with, and like we're vibing, man. Right? You just vibe with them, and you're like, yeah. And there was this one woman. We were just kind of having fun,
Uh-huh.
uh, and she was in it with me, man. It was just like, you know, we were in it together, and
Yep.
we were just kind of going back. It was just in class, right? Some friend. It was her and I were on the table,
Oh, that's
and
fun.
and and she said something, and what I would have said to her, what I wanted to say, what almost came out of my mouth was, "Yo, sweetheart, man, come on, think about that." Right, because we were at that level of having fun, and I stopped
Yeah.
myself because I'm like, no, you can't, because that's the kind of thing you just say to someone. But I'm of an age now that I can't. There's certain things you just
That you
can't
feel
have
like you have
fun
to be
anymore.
aware of. Just
Yeah,
even though like it's just a part of who you are. Like
yeah.
like it's
Yeah,
yeah.
and she would have
Just
gone with it. She wouldn't have been in it. She would have been like, yeah, whatever, ever. And with the class in that moment would have been fine. It would have been non-issue, but
right.
it's just like, nah, I gotta
The boundaries you
So
have to hold.
yeah, you
But
gotta
you do a
like.
great job tiptoeing those. So
Well, no, I only because I'm just being myself, right? So, and the people would think like, oh, why? I, but I think what people also don't understand is different levels of being a professor, right? So you have like the research professors who, they're the ones that go along the tenure track route, and they like jump through the hoops you got to jump through. And the other professors say like, okay, we're going to anoint you as worthy of being in our club. We're going to give you tenure, and you're going to, okay, here you are. So you're the professor. And then there's the professors who are teachers like me. And, we don't have tenure, and we don't have these, the permanency of a job, right? Like I signed 3-year contracts, or sometimes maybe a 5-year contract, or even a 1-year contract if I feel like I only want to sign a 1-year one. And but it's very different. And so like part of the reason I'm not in that more stoic professional space is because I don't want to go to those meetings and sit around tables and be like that. I just want to be who I am. Right. So I chose a path where I would go to work, and I would operate in the exact same way. I would interact with people as in the same way I would interact with my next door neighbor or my wife or, my friends. Right. So, and so therefore that's been built into my way of operating as a professor. So I work with students, and I don't try to be cool with students. I'm just me. I used to call students bro 35 years ago when I started teaching, man.
Right.
Yo, man. So that doesn't change at all. But it's just people, but people don't know that. So,
right.
Yeah.
It just,
all right, man. No tenure. Yeah. On civil law. Yeah. I don't have tenure, but no, I do have tenure. My wife gave me tenure. And I gave her tenure, so we're good. Yeah. I gave it to myself. Yeah, it's like, yeah, we don't need that. It's God. We don't have kids, so it's not really such a big thing.
But yeah, that's great, because you might not have the impact that you have if that's if you went that different professional route, professorship route. So.
Yeah. Well, here, Diana P. The problem was when I was coming out of finished my PhD, and it was time for me to apply for tenure track jobs. First off, it was a really tough time in the market, and there weren't many jobs for me to apply for. And I was a Latin Americanist in my training, so there were really not many jobs at all. So, and then when I did think, all right, I'm going to have to do all the things I need to do to get a job, which is, write for publication. And, I wrote a book, but I didn't have articles in these journals and different things. And things that I just didn't feel like doing. I didn't want to do that. And so I really made a choice to say, I'm not going to do the kinds of things that I would need to do to get it would award me a job with tenure. So I never saw it as a problem, because I made the choice, very much so. And I never thought I should have tenure, because I didn't do it. I knew that if I would have done X, Y, and Z, I would have found a tenure job somewhere. And then once I wrote this book, and it was going to get published at this University of Chicago, which is the top publishing house in sociology. And I rewrote it. They told me, hey, do all these changes and rewrite it and send it back to us, and this will be really good. And I did, and I sent it back to them, 8 months later. And then they wrote back and said, nah, we're not interested. And I said, I'm not doing that, man. I'm not going to live my life like that. I don't want to do that. I don't have to, and I don't want to do it. So I never did. So I just said no. That's when it really stopped for Lori and I both.
What was it like jumping through those hoops and then, changing the book and then?
It was awesome. I had 2 copies of it, by the way. We were in my office when I cleaned my office out. It was sitting in my office for 30 years. Wow. And when I cleaned my office out last month or whatever it was, I put them both in recycling. I should have given you a copy, That was wild. Like, yeah, okay, see you later. That's it. It never got published. Yeah, it never got published.
So it's gone now. It's not even at home.
It's gone. I probably have it something somewhere. I don't know where I got. I might have it in a somewhere.
I'm
But
like kind
isn't
of
that what
depressed
all
about
this?
that.
Yeah, no, dude. Karl Marx said all that is solid melts into air. Boom. We all go, just like we'll all go. It's fine. It doesn't matter. Yeah. So you just, yeah, it's been really nice actually to, yeah, it's been a good life. I don't have anything to complain
Mm.
about. Yeah. Well, I have a lot to complain about, but what's the point? Who's going to listen? You know what I mean?
Stream will
Yeah.
listen.
Yeah. And our version, hang on, I'm looking at Diana P. And our version of Subtitles is nothing like yours. Yeah. 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 Yeah, it's good. Yeah, well, you got to disagree. Some professors are not going to be open to disagree. It depends on what the disagreement is, right? If you're thoughtful in the disagreement, then the professor will probably more likely to be thoughtful in the way that they respond. And if they think you're wrong or they think you're right, then they'll respond that way. But a lot of us, here's one of the problems with the professoriate. It's really, we walk into a classroom, Elijah, this is your whole experience of education, I'm sure. All of us,
Mhm.
actually. You walk into a classroom feeling like there's a certain amount of material that you have to cover. And so, you just start and you cover it week after week after week, right? And you think like, I got to get through all this material, right? I don't have that. There's like the material that you would need to know in a class called race, ethnicity, and culture is like the world, basically. So I could teach the class 24/7 for the next 30 years and have the same group of students, and we still wouldn't get through it all.
Right.
So I don't have that. So, but a lot of us do. And then when you raise your hand and you say, wait, what about this? And then it's going to take them off course. So many professors feel some kind of way about that because they feel like, oh, I got to get through my material as if it matters. But, people aren't listening anyway, or it doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But we think that it does. And so a lot of it isn't just that we're arrogant and we think we have the right answers and stuff. A lot of it is just that you can't take too many questions, especially ones that are disagreement questions, because I'm going to have to in order to respond to that, it's going to take 10 or 15 minutes out of my class. And so, yeah, that kind of thing.
Mm.
So that sort of thing happens a lot. Now, I'm being very generous to the jerks. There are professors who are arrogant jerks, and I'm being generous to them. So, you know, yeah.
So it
How
sounds
about
like
that?
enough professors don't plan for maybe students who want to disagree or are just driven by curiosity. They're just not
Yeah,
planning for that as much.
yeah. And a lot of times, and I get this sometimes, a lot of students think they have a really thoughtful disagreement. And I'm like, okay, listen, I hear that question, but you need to understand that for me to actually respond to the question, I'm going to have to take 10 minutes. This happens after class a lot, right? I'm going to have I like the question, but there are so many assumptions in the question. In order for me to really hear it, I need to ask you 5 other questions to understand what your assumptions are. And
Hmm.
after I get that, then I can respond to your question. So now I need 10 or 15 minutes with you just with that one question. And the easiest thing is for me to just be like, yeah, okay, that's a good question. I never thought of that before and walk away. Or to be like, nah, you're wrong on that. Like,
Hmm.
but how can I say you're wrong? Because I'm not even sure what the assumptions are, right? And
Right.
so, but it takes a lot. It takes a lot of time. It takes Oh, and so a lot of times we shut students down without realizing we're doing it. And part of it is just because it takes too much time, especially think about this class, right? That's why we do these office hours. Think about this. This is
Yeah.
all that's happening. Everything we've talked about today that I'm talking about, this is what I don't say in the class, right? So it's
Right.
like, oh my God.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway.
That's a really cool, open, honest response to like the inner world of professors,
Yeah.
of some professors.
Yeah. But some of us are some people are really just arrogant, but most are not. I will say that most of my colleagues across the board are 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 very smart and very thoughtful. Yeah, I will say that. Yeah, and are nice and are mostly nice people. Well, I don't know. They might go home and kick their dogs. I don't know, but from what I can see, they're nice people, right? Yeah. Okay. What else are there any other questions? No, men were the ones that gave women the right to vote and go to college and wear pants. This teacher has a tendency to randomly make up his own rendition of history. No, listen. Wait, what do you mean? Men were the ones that gave women. Well, yeah, of course men were, because in the end, men were in power and men made the decision. But men only made that decision because people lobbied for them to do so. That was my point yesterday. So if men were, if these same men who made the decision weren't pressured to do that, they wouldn't have done it. But they were pressured, and in part they were often pressured by other men, but they were often also pressured by people who are of minority groups. Like someone mentioned the ADA. When the ADA was passed, I was the Americans with Disabilities Act. I was the faculty advisor to the disabled students at Rutgers. And man, these students they're doing shit like chaining themselves to buses because the buses didn't have lifts and there weren't curb cutouts, and they were chaining themselves to like the gates to open to the university, doing crazy stuff. They were demanding that people make changes. But in the end, it was able-bodied people that made the changes and that passed the ADA, and people with disabilities supported that, and they helped write the laws, and they did all sorts of stuff. But it was the pressure that got put upon them. But in the end, yeah, sure, it was able-bodied people that did that, just like men did all these things. So anyway, that's my response to that. Yeah. See, there's an example of it. So yes, that the person who just wrote that, yes, you are technically correct, but you've missed. There's an assumption. There's another thing there that you've missed that is absolutely equally as true. So I'm assuming that. Yeah.
If I'm understanding you correctly, it's because you're saying there was pressure from other groups, but
yeah,
there were men that passed it.
Yeah, men had to vote for it. Yeah. Right. It was men at the board of trustees and running the University of Penn State that ultimately other universities is, yeah, we got to admit women. Of course, there weren't women that made that vote. It was men. But you can't pat men on the back because they never would have voted that way or made that decision if they weren't being pressured by other men and by, people of minority status, whatever the issue was.
Right.
So, that's that's the thing. That's where we get to, right? It's like, see, you that's the problem with all of these ideas, that we're limited in what it takes so much, Uncivil law. I have faith in the Supreme Court also. Not only that, but I have faith in John Roberts. I feel like John Roberts understands the stakes here. And
is he Supreme Court?
Yeah. He's Roberts is his Chief Justice, and like, I feel like you need change. I was saying this to a friend of mine earlier. You gotta the thing about Trump, and I said this earlier with DE&I, the thing that's really important is sometimes for systems to really change, you gotta shake them up, man. You gotta shake them really, really hard, and you gotta do some real serious. Make some serious decisions and just be very whatever, shake it up, man. Mm-hmm. But understand that when you do that, a lot of stuff, there's a lot of fallout. Like Trump just, they passed that thing about federal grants and so on, and they just rescinded the order this afternoon because they did it without thinking through of the fallout. It's like, you can't. Do you really understand what you just did? Like, this is crazy, right? And so they rescinded it. I knew they were going to rescind that. order because like everything, damn man. So anyway, so the good thing is making those big decisions like that, like forcing some serious change, but at the same time, you're gonna have to fine tune it, and we're gonna leave it up to the Supreme Court to have enough wisdom to fine tune some of that. Yeah, I have faith in it. Yeah.
What would the impact have been if they didn't rescind it?
Uh,
Or what are you seeing the impact would have been if they didn't rescind the order?
well,
Like
things would have
everything.
come to a grinding halt, man. Dude, you understand? This is money flowing throughout between the government and all sorts of organizations and institutions all over the country. And it's like it just stops. It's like, wait, what?
Like no more
What are we
funds.
talking about here? Like you got things have to work, man. The wheels of society gotta flow, man. You can't. This is like, yeah. This is where I appreciate some of the like quick responses, but wait, I want to go back. Oh, hang on. No, there was somebody, there was a comment here. Ian, is the opinion of this panel that protests in the past were as violent as today's? Is it? That's a really cool question because Lori has been asking that question. We're trying to figure out who to ask besides ourselves. Like we both remember the 60s and 70s. And, there's a really cool photo of the Black Panthers standing on the steps of Cornell University with their guns, man, just demanding changes at Cornell University. You can find it online. Jeff, look it up. Look up the Black Panthers, Cornell. I'm quite sure it's Cornell. I don't think it's Yale. With their guns and stuff, like these dudes, they were serious, man. And people think like, oh my God, these protests, this was so dangerous. It's like, dude, the 1960s were pretty dangerous also, man. And I'm pretty sure those guns were loaded and like, oh, dang. So anyway, I don't know if it's more violent than today's. I think it's the potential for violent. It's like, yeah, there we go, right there. Look at like, yeah. Welcome,
Oh,
parents. Hey, parents, we're here. We're gonna protect your kids. 1969, man.
wow.
Imagine driving your kid off to Penn State, and like these dudes are like, outside the, the the student union building, man. And like,
Wow.
so they,
That's
you gotta
insane.
take things with a certain grain of salt, man. It's that's pretty wild.
I responded and I said, I feel like today's protests are much more impactful because of video and
Mm,
tech. In the past, it might have been more
yeah,
violent, but today we can see the violence whenever we want. We can pull it up on our phone day after. I mean, we just pulled up a picture from
yeah.
1969. Like, it's just
Well,
been,
listen, but
yeah.
but even the Black Panthers didn't use their guns. They were there for protection, right? So they weren't shooting anybody. Damn, if they'd have shot everybody, if they'd have shot people, that would have been the end. But uh, they were just using the guns as protection. They're just like, yeah, hey, we're going to protect our fellow students here. But across the board, the Black Panthers were not violent. They demonstrated very very limited amount of violence. That was a community protection organization because the police weren't protecting people in Black communities. They were opening schools, they were opening soup kitchens, they were opening health clinics. The Black Panthers were doing a lot of community-based social servicing because the government wasn't doing it. And this is not an excuse. If you have a certain understanding of the Black Panthers, just go read about them. Things really took a turn for the worse when the FBI got involved and started, trying to frame them and, put them all in prison because, they were very much a separatist organization, and we didn't, yeah, they didn't, yeah. So Grandpa's Place, yeah. I remember the 70s and 80s protests are mild. Yeah, definitely milder today. Yeah, it's crazy. So anyway, um,
Wow.
so it's just life is so complicated. You got to live, Elijah. You got to live. People, you're going to be my age, and people are going to talk about, COVID and George Floyd and Trump. They're going to talk about Trump. Whoa, back then, you know, young people are going to be talking about Trump, and you're going to be like,
Right.
Trump, you know, that wasn't that crazy. Like, come on. Yeah, it was, but it wasn't. I mean, like, you know, there was, you were going to have a civil war. It's like, you know. Yeah. Yeah, right. James Anthony and the Weather Underground is a very tiny group, man. It's a very tiny group of people. So it's kind of like the thing is looking through history that, you know, we have once we apply a name to something, they seem so much bigger than they are. But the Weather Underground was like, you know, dozens of people, you know. So anyway, yeah. It's a big country. All right, we should go, man. It's been 2 hours. We've been talking for 2 hours. Listen,
I,
so we're gonna tomorrow's
yeah,
DE and I part 2.
DI part 2. Okay.
Yeah, it's gonna be I and B.
Oh, the I and the B. Okay.
Inclusion and belonging. Yeah,
And then Laurie said there was another one, right? Did
yeah, attachment or something. I don't know what it is. She said something. I'll see if I can make that work. I can figure out
We
how
don't have
fit
to
that.
keep expanding the alphabet soup for.
Oh no, we do. It's gonna keep going, bro. We're gonna just keep.
I'm
this
trying to
thing
simplify
going.
things. I like abbreviations of 3 letters. That's why LGBT, I want GSM. It's so much more concise.
What's GSM?
Gender identity, sexual orientation, minorities. So it has both groups. It doesn't have 30 different letters.
Oh yeah, you're right. It has everything. GSM. All right, I'm gonna start saying that. That sounds like some insurance company though. GSM. Who's
Wait, is
your
it
car
LGBT?
insurance? I get my car insurance at GSM, so I have to work on that. Yeah. Okay, inclusion and belonging tomorrow, man. Yeah,
Let's go.
yeah. Okay, so listen. Thanks everybody. Man, yeah, it's really fun. Okay, and
Good
thanks
talk.
Elijah. Thanks
Sam,
Jess.
thank you always.
All right, be well.